plastic bag on the roadside, a sanitation worker thought he had just found a free dinner. But when he washed the pieces of meat under the faucet, what he discovered sent screams piercing through the winter night of 1996. That was only the beginning of the nightmare. Within days, Nanjing police had found over 2,000 pieces of a 20-year-old college student's remains scattered throughout the city like clues in a cruel game. The case would become an obsession for nearly 3 decades. This is the story of Diao Qing, a case that has haunted an entire nation. January 19th, 1996. Winter in Nanjing was bitterly cold. The northeast wind whistled through every street, penetrating even the thickest coats. While most residents huddled around steaming hot pot dinners at home, somewhere out there, people still worked silently in the harsh cold to make a living. Through the white fog and empty streets, a sanitation worker continued his tireless work. His job was to clean the sidewalks, scrape thick snow to prevent ice formation, and collect trash before it piled up. While working diligently in the freezing morning, he suddenly noticed something unusual: a bag lying alone on Huaqiao Road in the Xinhuaiku area. It lay there so oddly and unexpectedly that he had to stop. Driven by curiosity, he gently opened the bag. Inside were neatly cut pieces of meat, uniform in size, apparently pre-processed. The color was fresh, perfectly cooked, and looked quite appetizing. He assumed it was good pork, perhaps dropped accidentally by someone returning from the market. For him, a sanitation worker in the freezing winter, this was like an unexpected gift from heaven. Without hesitation, he decided to take the bag of meat home, already imagining a hot, rich meat soup that would chase away the bone-chilling cold of Nanjing's winter night. After a long day of hard work outdoors, what could be better than a warm meal with the aroma of savory soup and laughter filtering through frost-covered windows? Being meticulous by nature, he didn't forget to thoroughly wash each piece of meat under the faucet, carefully removing any dust or dirt that might have stuck. His cautious work habits always put food safety first, even with a gift found on the street. But then, while casually reaching into the bag for another piece of meat, his finger touched something strange. It was long, soft, but firmer than regular meat. His instincts warned him something was wrong, so he pulled the object out of the bag. And then, his world collapsed before his eyes. It was a human finger. He stood frozen, staring blankly at the horrifying object in his hand. Part of him still tried to deny it, hoping it was just dim lighting causing him to see wrong. But then, as if compelled by strange instinct, he bent down to look back into the bag. At that moment, the truth was even more cruel. Not just one, but 3 human fingers were mixed in with the meat he had planned to cook for his family. His horrified scream tore through the cold night. A terrifying thought struck him. If these were really human fingers, what were those pieces of pork? His hands trembling, he frantically dialed the police. When they received the call, the police officers were initially skeptical. They thought it might just be a night shift worker who was too tired, imagining things after an exhausting and freezing day. But when he brought the bag to the station, the atmosphere immediately changed. Tension filled the room as they saw with their own eyes what was wrapped in plastic. Who would throw away such a large amount of meat on the roadside? And when human fingers were revealed before their eyes, all doubt vanished instantly. The bag was sent for examination. After several hours, the forensic results that were announced left the entire police station silent. This wasn't ordinary meat. This was human remains. Immediately, a large-scale manhunt was deployed throughout Nanjing. Police divided into multiple teams, urgently searching every street and alley, leaving no clue unexplored that might lead to the victim's identity or trace the perpetrator. However, what they discovered next was even more horrifying than imagined. One by one, at 8 different locations around Nanjing University, police discovered plastic bags containing the remaining parts of the body. From the stadium near the main gate to the hospital campus, to remote sidewalks, traces of the victim were scattered everywhere, as if the killer had deliberately arranged each location to challenge the investigation team. The next day, an even more disturbing discovery was recorded. A bag containing cooked meat parts, and inside it, was a human head. 10 days later, the victim's clothing was also found, extinguishing any faint hope that this was just an accident or misunderstanding. At that time, DNA testing technology was not yet widespread, so identifying the remains couldn't be done through modern methods. However, through muscle tissue analysis, hair samples, and clothing characteristics, forensic experts determined that the victim was a young woman. Police began contacting families with missing relatives, meticulously cross-referencing every small detail. And then, from the dark veil and scattered remains, the tragic picture gradually became clear. The victim was identified as Diao Qing. So who was Diao Qing, and why did a young woman have to endure such a brutal death? Her body dismembered into thousands of pieces, some of which were cooked like ordinary meat. Qing was born in March 1976 in Taizhou City, Jiangsu Province. She was the youngest in a family with two sisters, and according to her older sister Diao Aihua, their childhood was a long series of hardships, poverty, and silent endurance. The family lived in persistent poverty, and every winter was a harsh trial. The two sisters had only one coat to share between them, and naturally, as the younger one, Qing always had to use her sister's hand-me-down shirts with worn shoulders or patched shoes. While other children their age played carefree, buying candy at the school gate, the Diao sisters could only watch from afar, silently counting every penny their parents had scraped together. After saving for a whole week, they might have enough to buy one small candy. Finally, Diao Aihua, the older sister, chose to sacrifice her own future. She quietly dropped out of school, accepting any job that could earn money, all with one single goal: to earn enough money to send her younger sister to continue school. Qing understood the burden her sister was carrying. She felt every hard-earned dollar her sister sent home, understanding that silent sacrifice through each piece of old clothing, each package of food sent from home. More than once, she had suggested dropping out to work and help, but Aihua always firmly refused. Just keep studying. Study to have a good future, a future we've never dared to dream of. That was the familiar phrase Aihua often told her sister. And Qing didn't disappoint those expectations. She studied tirelessly. Finally, she was accepted to Nanjing University, majoring in computer applications in the information management department. In October 1995, she set foot in Nanjing with an excited heart, carrying dreams of escaping the vicious cycle of poverty, and above all, carrying her family's hopes. Although the family was poor and couldn't buy her a computer or expensive study materials, they always tried to maintain a peaceful space for her studies. To the extent that when her grandfather passed away, or even on the day Aihua got married, they kept the news secret because they wanted Qing to focus and live a better life than they had. Qing was always someone who lived quietly but with great effort. In her friends' eyes, she was an introverted, quiet, and simple student. She often wore the same few old outfits, never paying attention to her appearance like many other female students. However, she always radiated neatness, cleanliness, and a progressive spirit that made people easily sense the seriousness in her every action. She didn't like noise and rarely appeared in crowded places. Nevertheless, Qing wasn't completely isolated. She still had a small group of close, trusted friends to share academic pressures with, occasionally going out together to chat and relieve stress after class. Even after going to the city for university, she always stayed in touch with old friends from home. On January 7, 1996, she took time to visit home, meeting old friends for dinner and reminiscing about high school memories. It was a warm and pleasant evening. The next day, she returned to Nanjing to continue the new semester. Everything proceeded normally until the afternoon of January 10th around 5 p.m., when Qing was last seen leaving the Gulu campus. Classmates still clearly remember that moment. They saw her walk outside, carrying her backpack, her small figure blending into the crowd on the street. And they also remember that from that moment on, she never returned. Before leaving that afternoon, a small but tense incident had occurred. Qing's roommate had accidentally used a hot plate right in the dormitory, a strictly prohibited act according to school regulations. When discovered, the dormitory supervisor required both students in the room to share responsibility, regardless of who actually violated the rules. Qing was forced to pay half the fine. She had tried to explain that she wasn't involved in using the hot plate and didn't even know her roommate had done so. But all attempts at explanation were futile. The management maintained their penalty decision. The argument dragged on helplessly, making her feel unjustly treated. Classmates present at that moment still remember her sad, disappointed expression as she walked out of the dormitory building. And that was the last time they saw Qing alive. Initially, no one thought anything serious had happened. It was exam week, with heavy pressure causing many students to isolate themselves to focus on studying. Qing was no exception. She had previously disappeared for entire days in the library or quiet study corners when she needed time alone. Moreover, before leaving, she had carefully tidied her bed and organized her bookshelf neatly. Everything suggested she was just going out for a while. Perhaps she just wanted to regain composure or needed to handle something. No one suspected that moment would be the last time anyone saw her. Classmates and her roommate reported her missing, but the dormitory management decided not to notify her family. They didn't want to cause panic. They even kept the news within a small circle of friends and staff. It wasn't until January 19th that everything came to light, more than a week after Qing was last seen. In the following days, horror continued to spread throughout Nanjing. Police continuously discovered more plastic bags, all containing human body parts that had been chopped into small, bite-sized pieces, processed so meticulously that at a glance, anyone could easily mistake them for pork bought at the market. These bags were scattered at multiple points throughout the city, but the highest concentration was still around Nanjing University, where the victim had studied. This cruel dismemberment made the autopsy process extremely difficult. Identifying marks were completely erased, requiring the forensics team days to partially recover biological information from the remaining tissue fragments. After comparing muscle structure, analyzing biological indices, and gender characteristics that remained, they reached a heartbreaking conclusion. The victim was a young woman who had just turned 19. The horror didn't stop there. Soon after, more plastic bags were found at other locations like the Shuizuogang area or street corners with little foot traffic on the city's outskirts. Each discovery left both the investigation team and residents stunned, because this time, there weren't just processed body parts, but also the victim's clothing, along with the most haunting detail, a cooked human head. When the search ended, a number that shook all of Nanjing was announced. Over 2,000 pieces of Qing's remains had been collected by police from 8 different locations, all around Nanjing University campus. Each piece was carefully wrapped in plastic bags, deliberately distributed everywhere, as if the perpetrator wanted to send a message or slow down the process of identifying the victim. But what haunted investigators even more wasn't just the quantity, but the method of body processing. Every cut was extremely precise. No signs of haste, no deviations, no sawtooth edges like amateur tools would leave. Particularly, the cuts around the neck area were astonishingly clean, showing the perpetrator must have had high anatomical skills, possibly a doctor, an advanced medical student, or even someone with experience in surgical procedures. Some body parts, according to forensic examination, had been cooked multiple times over extended periods. This wasn't temporary boiling to hide evidence, but actual cooking processes lasting many days, as if someone was experimenting or had a darker purpose that no one could understand. This made Qing's face unidentifiable and completely obscured the time of death. However, that wasn't the most horrifying part. All major internal organs, heart, liver, spleen, had completely disappeared without a trace. They weren't present in any of the found bags, nor were there signs of destruction. They had been deliberately removed. This disappearance, more than anything else, opened up countless dark theories. Police worked day and night, continuously contacting families with missing relatives to cross-reference information. Finally, thanks to a small detail, a distinctive mole still identifiable on the right cheek, they were able to confirm the victim's identity. When the news was announced to the family, desperate grief struck like lightning. Beloved Qing, the daughter in whom the entire family had placed all their trust and hope, the one for whom they had sacrificed everything to nurture into success, was now gone forever. Not only brutally murdered, her body was also desecrated in the most cruel way. And worse yet, the killer was still free out there, blending into the crowd as if nothing had happened. A senior officer involved in the case investigation bluntly declared, "This is not the work of an amateur. Anyone who did this must have deep knowledge of human body structure. This act was both systematic and extremely brutal." The investigation entered a difficult phase. Following standard procedure, police prioritized investigating those closest to the victim, classmates, professors, and everyone who lived and worked in the university area. Based on crime scene analysis and case characteristics, investigators sketched a psychological profile of the suspect. A single middle-aged man, physically fit, living alone, and most importantly, having access to cooking facilities in a private space. This was a crucial factor because processing the body required extensive time and secluded space. However, after thoroughly screening the entire Nanjing University campus, from professors and staff to workers, they found no one fitting this profile. Not a single person. The investigation was then expanded citywide to neighboring districts, hoping to find any clue, however small, that might lead to the truth. But every lead ended in a dead end. You might wonder about security cameras. Surely such a large university must have had adequate surveillance systems. In reality, while that might be true today, in the mid-1990s, surveillance technology was very limited. Security cameras were still a luxury, and most public areas weren't equipped with them. Nevertheless, Nanjing police treated this case with maximum seriousness. They established a special task force, stationed right at Nanjing University, working tirelessly, systematically screening every street corner and alley in the city to find anything that could become evidence. But after 3 months of exhausting all resources without any significant leads, the task force finally had to withdraw. The atmosphere at the university became tense as rumors began spreading. Qing's photo was posted throughout the campus, and every student was required to prove they weren't involved. They had to present clear alibis for the night she disappeared. However, like previous times, the investigation hit another dead end. The killer once again slipped through the hands of justice. When students, professors, and Qing's friends all had solid alibis, police gradually eliminated everyone in her direct social circle. From then on, the investigation direction completely changed. Perhaps this wasn't the act of someone familiar with the victim. It might have been a random attack by a stranger, or worse, the work of a dangerous psychopath still hiding in the city. The media quickly picked up the story, reporting every new development. Police even announced rewards for any information that could lead to the perpetrator's arrest. They publicly released case details, from the type of plastic bags used to wrap the remains, the bag containing the meat pieces, to a patterned bedsheet found during the investigation. All were hoped to be recognized by someone, somewhere. But time passed, and despite all announcements, all pleas for help from police, no useful leads came in. January 19, 2016, exactly 20 years after the shocking case at Nanjing University, an article posted on a local WeChat account shook Chinese public opinion once again. The article revealed a chilling truth. According to current legal regulations, this was the final deadline in the 20-year statute of limitations for murder prosecution. In other words, if no one was arrested or indicted by the end of that day, then even if the perpetrator was revealed later, they couldn't be brought to justice. Even if they confessed, even with clear evidence, the law would no longer have the right to punish. The most brutal crime could pass forever, as if it never existed. This news quickly ignited a wave of national outrage. Citizens were furious, journalists spoke out in unison, and the online community continuously called for justice. They demanded an exception, that for such brutal cases, there could be no concept of investigation expiration. A cold-blooded killer couldn't hide for 2 decades and then legally escape just because time had passed. The afternoon of the next day, China's Ministry of Public Security officially responded. On their Weibo account, the Criminal Investigation Bureau declared decisively, "No statute of limitations, no forgetting." This commitment was both reassurance and a strong declaration that the case would not be closed, no matter how many more years it took. From that point, legal scholars began heated debates. Should a statute of limitations apply to particularly serious crimes? Some opinions suggested that in exceptional cases, it might still be possible to petition for continued prosecution, even after exceeding the legal deadline. But this depended on legal interpretation, and more importantly, on the determination not to let justice be buried by time. For Qing's family, they only yearned for one thing: the truth. In their rare statements to media, they shared that even if the killer came forward to confess today, they would be ready to forgive. They didn't need revenge, didn't need punitive justice. They just wanted to know why. Why did their beloved daughter had to suffer such a cruel fate? They just needed an answer to find peace. Over the years, due to the mysterious and horrifying nature of the case, the story has repeatedly gone viral on social media, each time stirring public opinion with heated discussions, new theories, and spreading fear in the community. Some believe that cooking and dismembering the body was the killer's way of destroying evidence, aimed at creating maximum difficulty for the investigation and erasing any traces that could lead to their true identity. Others think this behavior stemmed from deep personal motives, perhaps an outburst of rage or some twisted psychological perversion that drove the perpetrator to cause Qing's horrific death. During the investigation, the Yangtze Evening Post published Qing's photo, showing her with short hair similar to a male style. This image immediately caused panic waves in the community. Many worried that there might be a serial killer lurking, specifically targeting women with short hair. Fear increased when people remembered that Qing wore a red coat on the day she disappeared. This made women with short hair, who frequently wore red, particularly anxious. But there were even darker rumors. The complete disappearance of Qing's major internal organs led to theories that she might have become a victim of human organ trafficking. This is one of the most haunting theories and has persisted for many years. This theory was based on the actual situation of China's organ market. According to research by scholar Shuibo Wang from 1983, the main source of organs for transplants in China came from executed prisoners. This situation continued until 2015, when the government officially banned using organs from executed persons for transplant purposes. After the 2015 ban, the organ shortage situation, already very serious, became even worse. At the same time, another concerning phenomenon began appearing. The number of mysterious disappearances across the country showed an increasing trend. While there's no hard evidence directly linking Qing's death to organ trafficking, the fact that the most important organs in her body disappeared without a trace quickly made this theory one of the most believed by the public. Public interest in the case was also clearly shown through online activities. On March 21, 2007, a user named Shiliu Cha posted a detailed description of the case online. Later, on May 28, 2008, a group of anonymous users on Baidu Tieba established Qing Bar, a specialized forum to collect and discuss all information related to the case. Notably, on June 19th of the same year, another netizen with the nickname Hey Misa posted a shocking analysis titled "A Small Thought on the Nanjing Dismemberment Case." In the post, this person theorized that the killer might have known Qing beforehand, possibly even having a secret crush on her. The post immediately went viral and created fierce debates on the internet. Many began questioning the true identity of Hey Misa, whether this person had inside information about the case or even had some personal connection to the incident. Later, on June 24, 2008, the Modern Express in Nanjing reported on a wave causing a stir on Chinese social media, precisely the posts by the user named Hey Misa. The story quickly attracted police attention, and from then on, Hey Misa disappeared. The original post was suddenly deleted, further raising suspicions about the identity and true motives of the person behind it. Some media outlets later reported that Hey Misa had agreed to cooperate with investigative agencies if requested. They said this user was a 26-year-old man who had studied law and whose father was a police officer. Local police later also confirmed this person had no malicious intent. His posts were mainly speculation and inference based on assumptions, not actual evidence. The forum editor where the post appeared also clarified all content had been removed at police request, not because Hey Misa had any real connection to the case or because he was trying to hide something. Nevertheless, this person's sudden disappearance without any public explanation still left the online community suspicious. Was this simply someone who liked to theorize, or someone who knew more than he had ever said? In the years following Ai Qing's tragedy, Nanjing University made small efforts to show remorse. They refunded all tuition fees the family had paid for her. However, this was still not enough to soothe the family's pain. On March 29, 2021, exactly 25 years after the case, Sister Ai Hua officially filed a lawsuit against Nanjing University in the Gulu District People's Court. She demanded compensation of 1.62 million yuan, approximately $246,000, alleging the school had failed to ensure student safety, especially after penalizing her sister on January 10th and then letting her leave the school alone. Ai Hua argued that the discovery of Ai Qing's remains scattered throughout the campus was evidence of the school's weak security system. However, just 1 week later, on April 6th, she suddenly withdrew the lawsuit without giving clear reasons. Until May 2022, a Weibo post caused a public uproar by claiming the Nanjing University case had finally been solved. Rumors spread quickly, with everyone thinking justice had finally been served. But on May 30th, all hopes were shattered. Ai Qing's family, Nanjing police, and the Cyberspace Administration all confirmed this was just false rumors. The Nanjing case still had no resolution. The original poster was later fined for spreading false information. Nearly 3 decades have passed. Still no justice, no resolution, only deep wounds carved into the family's memory. Even today, many of Ai Qing's relatives still avoid mentioning her name. They are terrified of reliving the horror of seeing her dismembered remains displayed at the police station, haunting images that will never fade. This case is not just the tragedy of a poor family losing their talented daughter, but also the collective nightmare of an entire city, an entire nation. It raises persistent questions about human nature. How could someone be so cruel as to turn a young woman into thousands of pieces of meat? Was this the act of a psychopath, or was there a darker conspiracy behind it? The case of Diao Ai Qing remains one of China's most notorious unsolved murders, a stark reminder that sometimes evil can hide in plain sight for decades, leaving families and communities forever haunted by unanswered questions. And that concludes today's case. Thank you for following along, and we'll see you in the next episodes.